Hi, my name is Kyle Calvert, and this is my analysis for um, option A of Introduction to Film Studies. I chose to do a scene out of Stagecoach because of the movies we've watched. This has been one of my favorites, I'd say, if not my favorite so far. Um, and it's really this movie itself is really a turning point for Western movies in general. So I thought it was a pretty interesting option to analyze. Not only is it a turning point for Western movies, it's also one of the cornerstones of both John Ford and John Wayne's careers. Um, this movie really, especially for John Wayne, turned his career around and made him a really prominent actor. In this scene is the scene that pretty much started it for him. Because of the ability of that Ford and Wayne had in making such a great movie, they really turned Western movies um, from B movies to you know A-list movies, I guess, if that's what you want to call it, feature films. Um, so yeah, thanks to the work of these two gentlemen, we really get more prominent Western movies. And yeah, so let's take a look at this scene here.
Sweetheart!
Okay.
Telegraph line ain't
So
working.
leading up to this point,
Sweetheart!
throughout the film, leading up to this point throughout the film, there's been a lot of talk about this character named Ringo the Kid, or the Ringo Kid, played by John Wayne, going around causing trouble, evading law enforcement, whatever you name it. So this is really a way of building up the character, the Ringo Kid. It adds sort of a feeling of suspense. The viewers thought is caught sitting there thinking, when are we gonna meet this character? When does he show up? I assume going into the movie, most people that were watching it probably knew that this actor John Wayne was going to play the main character. They probably knew that you know he was that this main character was going to appear at some point, so it wasn't really necessarily a surprise that he appeared. But it they did a really good job of creating suspense as to when we were going to meet the character, and then they did a great job of finally introducing him and creating such an iconic scene. So let's take a look here. So here we see the stagecoach rolling up. You can hear the music start to, I don't know if you can hear it, I don't know if this app records sound on the video, but you can hear the gunshots from the Ringo Kid, and the viewer is kind of caught. Okay, so I might have messed up that recording a little bit. But anyway, as I was saying, as the stagecoach rolls up the path, you can hear the music start to change pace a little bit, change the mood. That's just a way of creating this different emotion, this feeling of excitement for the viewer. So something's coming. It's almost heroic music. Maybe this main character is going to show up. Um, so then you hear gunshots, and those gunshots just add a little bit of intrigue to the scene. I think people are like, "Whoa, whoa, what was that?" So then finally the camera pans over to John Wayne's character, the Ringo Kid. And this is one of the most iconic entrances of all time. So let's take a look at that.
Whoa, steady, ho, ho. Hey, look, it's Ringo. Yeah. Hello, kid. Hello, Curly.
So as you can see, the camera angle started off from a wider shot. It showed Ringo's whole body, and it it gradually zoomed in onto his face. But while it was zoomed out, it showed him standing in a heroic, important, I guess, stance. He really looked like this big main character in the beginning of the shot. He twirled his gun, just all the kind of cool Western things you'd expect these characters to be doing. Um, so it as the camera zooms in, it zooms in onto his face, signifying that this is an important character and an important moment. Um, there's no one else in the scene. There's nothing else other than obviously the mountains in the background and stuff like that. But there's nothing else going on in his shot. So they're really trying to single him out and show the importance of this character. Um, so as the scene goes on, as the scene goes on, we start to get more of a feel for who the Ringo Kid is as a character. We almost start to establish this relationship with him, if you will, through the screen. Um, he's a sarcastic and comedic character, but he's a very likable character. So that made him, even though in the film he was technically a criminal, um, it made him a really good protagonist and main character. So let's watch a little bit more of the scene.
Hiya, Buck. How's your folks? Oh, just fine, Ringo, except my grandfather came
Shut up. Didn't expect to see you riding shotgun on this run, Marshal.
So right away you can see that he knows both of the men that are sitting on the front of the stagecoach. He asks Buck about his folks. That adds sort of a personal feel to it, one that you can almost feel as a viewer. And Buck likes him. You could see by his reaction, by when he greeted Ringo. So Ringo's a likable guy in the actual film, let alone as a character in the film to the people watching. And then he also knows Marshall, the sheriff that is arresting him. He even makes a little joke at him, which I feel like if they had really a bad relationship, leading up to this point, that Marshall would have been a lot more forceful with arresting him, and Ringo would have been a lot more worried. But um, it's a pretty laid back scene and a pretty laid back arrest, if you will. Um, so that just adds to the personality and the character development of the Ringo Kid. Um, and we can see, even as the scene goes on a little bit, what the others in the stagecoach think of him as well. So let's watch that.
Lordsburg, I figured you'd be there by this time.
No. Lame horse. Well, it looks like you've got another passenger.
Yeah. I'll take the Winchester.
You may need me in this Winchester, Curly. Saw a ranch house burning last night.
You don't understand, kid. You're under arrest.
Curly?
So there, Ringo and Curly the marshal. I guess I called him a sheriff earlier. He's technically a marshal in this film. There they have another little reaction. Ringo tries to warn him about the fire of the village and the Indians that are, subsequently, I don't know if they're necessarily chasing them, but they end up meeting up later in the film. So Ringo tells him that he's going to need Ringo's help, and I think personally that Curly's reaction to that, telling him he's under arrest, is almost a way of Curly accepting his help, because um, he lets him, casually get in the stagecoach. You know, doesn't time him, doesn't really do anything more than just tell him to get in the stagecoach. So, as we find out throughout the film, Ringo ends up befriending pretty much everyone in the stagecoach, and he's a key character in this film. So, this is really the beginning of a long journey and a long relationship that the viewers get with the Ringo Kid. Now, one interesting thing that I found about this scene is, as you can see, as we saw a little bit earlier, I'll go back if I can find the right spot here. Um,
Lame horse. Well, it looks like you've got another passenger.
Yeah. I'll take the Winchester.
You may need me in this Winchester, Curly. Saw a ranch house burning last night.
You don't understand.
so what we see here, leading up to this point, Ringo is just kind of this character that people know about. They think he's cool. They think he's this awesome, rebel, cowboy, whatever you name it. But at this point, when he meets up with the marshal and the stagecoach, um, this is kind of an interesting little scenario here because Ringo almost looks, you know, less like a superhero, if you will, and more like a normal character that committed his crimes and he has to pay for him. Technically, I mean, he's technically under arrest, even though it doesn't necessarily feel like that throughout the whole film. But right here, you can see the marshal is sitting up above him with the gun aimed down at him. You know, shows kind of a change of power here in this scene. So I thought that was really, really interesting. Once I looked at it a little bit more. So I'll end my analysis there. That was my analysis of the scene of the entrance of the Ringo Kid in the movie The Stagecoach. Um, so yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks.